This is A Line Around Your Thoughts, a podcast that centers on conversations with artists, writers, musicians, and creatives from around the Inland Northwest. I'm your host, EJ Iannelli. Joining me in the Roquehart Media Studio today are Sara Mortier and Christina Villagomez. They are tattoo artists based in Spokane and Coeur, and they have a new joint exhibition that is running right now at the Terrain Gallery, and that is titled Body of Work. So welcome, Christina. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we have a lot to talk about just with this exhibition alone, but just before we started rolling, one of the things that I was really keen to talk about is kind of the history of tattooing. And so I figured that's a good place to start, going as far back to the beginning as we can. Because in my mind, and I'm not steeped in the world of tattoo art, and, I think of it as a very ancient art and almost a folk art. And then it kind of drops out of my mental conception for a couple centuries. Maybe it's just because it doesn't make it into Western history books. But yeah, I think of the 17th and 18th centuries, and it's not really there in my conception of it. And then all of a sudden it kind of reemerges in the 20th century as something that's associated with prisoners and sailors and people in the military and biker gangs a bit later on.
Even sideshows.
Yeah, and sideshows as well. And so you get almost this unsavory quality to, or shady quality to tattoo art. And then towards the end of the 20th century, it becomes a little more mainstream, a little more popularized. It becomes fashionable in a way. And now here we are in the end of the first quarter of the 21st century, and it is a very accepted kind of decorative art that is very personal and has cosmetic qualities as much as it has practical qualities. So that is my conception of it. Tell me where I'm wrong, tell me where I'm right.
No, I think it's a very good overview. Tattooing is one of humanity's oldest art forms, which it's phenomenal because a lot of us grew up, at least I grew up in a time where it was thugs and drugs, right? It was prisoners would have tattoos. It was only unsavory types, but it's so different. Our world has really opened up this last 30 years, 20 years, 10 years. But yeah, it's one of our oldest art forms going back thousands of years. One of the most notable examples is Otzi the Iceman, over 5,000 years old. His body was found in an iceberg, and he has over 60 tattoos on his body, just all over in different spots. And very, very strongly associated with spots where he had joint degradation and things like that. So the idea here is they're thinking it might be a medicinal thing.
Oh,
so
okay.
Starting off 5,000 years ago, I'm sure significantly older than that even, because if we're using it as a medicinal thing, where did we start? It had to have been before that. But that's one of the earliest examples that we see. And then, like you said, more tribal, a lot of incredible Polynesian body pieces being used for fertility even. I don't want to move too far ahead with that. If you have something you want to jump in with.
Well, I just think something that's really powerful about tattooing is that it really has belonged to every culture.
That's true.
People were getting tattoos in the British Isles, in Scandinavian countries, in Mesoamerica. It's really something that belongs to humanity. It's not something that is appropriated from one specific culture. And I think that is really beautiful. It really is truly a human tradition. And the work is beautiful. And I think there's something really neat about the fact that we're still getting a lot of the same kind of images. There's a visual language that continues into tattooing today. Mm-hmm. I always think of one of my favorite kind of ancient tattooed mummies is the Siberian bog maiden, and she has these leopards and wolves and an elk whose antlers are turning into flowers, and I mean, that's something I could get in a client request tomorrow. You know, that's amazing.
Yeah, and we see these different uses, and so when Sarah was talking, and the point that you made was that it really is pancultural. So that's something that occurred to me, and I was thinking again in a very Western context, and yet, yeah, you see it appear in Asian cultures and island cultures and all sorts of things.
Cultures completely separate from one another.
Yeah. And so it seems to be almost like this very human instinct to put marks on our skin. But the role of those marks, you had mentioned Ötzi, the Iceman, and here's somebody who you talk about the maybe medicinal uses of tattooing, but it's decorative in some respects. It's also got an element of social hierarchy, so you can distinguish various strata of the social hierarchy through someone's markings.
It's a rite of passage.
Yeah. And so they have all these functions in all these cultural functions, and it speaks a cultural language. I'm really intrigued by this idea of the consistent design language. Can you talk about maybe how the design language has changed? You've talked about the consistency in some of the design language. Can you talk about how the design language has changed and evolved over the years?
Well, I mean, I definitely think just in general, art changes and it has evolved. Something that's really kind of fascinating to me about the modern form of tattooing is that in a lot of ways, some of the best artists of our generation are tattoo artists. You see some famous tattoo artists that are oil painters and sculptors. They're multidisciplinary, and I think that really informs the work that you see. And the internet has kind of sped up this diversity in styles. So I think that sometimes you'll get some of the old heads that are a little bit upset about it, but I think it's really beautiful that there's such a change in style because we have so much more access to art and access to different types of visual language. And I don't think you're going to get rich tattooing. I mean, it is one of the more, I don't want to say financially stable forms of being a working artist, but I do think there is some pathways to feeling like you can make a living.
Well, that's the thing, and I think maybe that ties back into my sort of popular or mainstream perception of tattoos, which is that it was very niche. But as it has expanded into the mainstream, and that we can talk about how, whether that's been a good or a bad thing for the art, but as it's expanded into the mainstream, it seems like there would be more opportunities for tattoo artists like yourself, because even if you're not going to get whole body art, you might get a small tattoo, and that would still be, kind of help support you.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. I was gonna say on the point of, how tattoo art has looked at different times throughout history. Obviously, very dependent on the location where you're at. So, French Polynesia looking one way, England looking another way. But now in modern times, that is completely jumbled. Everything is all over the place. So we had a very narrow paths depending on where you were in the world at what time. And now, because of the internet, literally anything.
Sailors used to be our internet.
Yeah, that's true.
And do you lament the loss of some of that purity of, purity of design? Because as things become more jumbled, it does become, a little more ambiguous, a little more muddled.
Right.
And so while there's this melding that could be encouraged and certainly contributes to the art, when you have these, very pure, like, for example, Polynesian styles that then get, melded or maybe even appropriated in a certain way, does something get lost in that?
I think, personally, in my view, I don't lament that loss because it gives rise to self-expression, the way that we want to express ourselves. I personally, art for art's sake, okay, fine. It's what effect the art has on humans. And the fact that it's not as pure, it's not as straightforward, it doesn't have like these specific rules. I think that's amazing, because humans are so incredibly varied that someone is going to see something and they're like, oh, that's weird, I love that, I need that, because that is exactly them. That is who they are and who they want to be and who they want to express, what they want to express on their body. And I think that's pretty amazing. So I love the jumbled mess that it is, honestly.
I would say there are some genres I personally don't feel as comfortable tattooing. Like I'd say that I don't like to tattoo a lot, like I would say like a pure Polynesian tribal piece, just because I don't feel like I have a full understanding of the visual language behind
fair.
everything. Everything has such a symbolic meaning. I would rather refer a client to someone that specializes in something like that. Not necessarily because I don't think that it's not appropriate for everyone to get tattooed, but I think with something that does have such a structure to it, I think you're just better off going to a specialist, sometimes. But I think that could be for really any type of tattooing. There might be a style like black and gray realism where I think maybe someone's going to handle that more appropriately than I am.
Yeah. And as we talk about self-expression, tattooing to me is very unique because of its permanency and because of the kind of personal investment that you have in that. Now, I wear a t-shirt with a logo, or I have a piece of artwork hanging on my wall or something like that. And that's a form of self-expression, but I can take the t-shirt off. I can, take that picture down and swap it out for another. And so there's a certain commitment that comes with tattooing. So can you talk about that commitment, and do you see even closer, like personal identification with your clients and the art that they choose to have on their bodies because it's on their body and it is always there?
I always like to joke that, God provides the base model and we provide the custom options. I do think that one of my favorite aspects of tattooing is helping tell people stories, and the art that they choose. Your tastes may change as you age and get older, but it will always be a memorial to the person you were at the time you got it. And that's why I always try to encourage people to not have regrets, even if a tattoo maybe isn't something that they maybe would choose now. You have people come in like, oh, I had this 20 years ago and I would never get this tribal butterfly now. But I think it's beautiful that's a piece of them that they carry with them, that they can look at every day. And I think, no tattoo is going to, it's kind of a contradiction, because it's a permanent form of art in the sense that it's pretty difficult to get rid of, but it also changes so much with your body as you age. Lines are going to expand or fade. Shading is going to look brighter or duller. And it continues to tell a new story every day. And I think that's really powerful.
And Sarah, did you have thoughts on that?
I was just going to add, and it gives us such control over our body in a way that we don't really get to control it. As like, we can dye our hair and cut our hair and things like that, but generally we look like how we look, and the fact that we get to make that choice is extremely powerful.
It's kind of funny because as a woman, you hear jokes like, oh, women are able to lie about their appearances with makeup. But I actually think that makeup in some ways can show more about you, because it shows kind of the things you're interested in visually. Not to say that you have to wear makeup to express yourself, but I think it's kind of a cool indicator of things that you like or dislike. And, I think tattoos are kind of the same way, just on a more impactful level because of their permanency and the pain in getting them.
Well, yeah, and I don't want to reduce it to this, but we have bumper stickers on our cars that convey our personality and say, this is what I believe, and these are the things that are important to me. And with tattooing, it's again that form of self-expression where depending on the tattoo that you get, you can say, I strongly identify with this type of art or this type of imagery. And even I would say, and again, maybe I'm revealing my ignorance here, but I feel like text-based tattoos have come in more into vogue, where people are getting like whole passages tattooed on themselves, and that seems to have become more common. So here they are just getting, it's the fusion of the tattoo art and the literary.
Yeah.
Where they're, not using imagery, they're actually having language tattooed on them.
Case in point, as I bump the microphone, be kind on my knuckles, which, that's what I want to express to the world, right there, just as plainly as possible.
And it runs contrary to the phrases that we usually see on
life.
Yeah, exactly, or kill or maim or something like
I
that.
have the bitches back on my ankle, but that's a tribute to Elton John.
Yeah, but again, these are forms of self-expression, and then even if your attitude towards that ends up changing, maybe you'll become very curmudgeonly. Be kind reflects.
I'm getting there.
Reflects who you are at that point in time. So we've touched on a few trends. I mentioned some of the word-based tattoos or the verbal tattoos. Let's just look at the last maybe 10 years. Like, what are you seeing in terms of design trends? What are you seeing? Are people making more or getting more elaborate tattoos? Are they gravitating towards, full sleeves and things like that?
Birth flowers.
Birth flowers.
Birth month flowers.
So I have a theory that, and maybe you feel the same way. I feel like every year there's a trend. Usually I notice it with animals. Maybe that's because I do a lot of animal tattoos. I have a lot of animal art. But last year was the year of the birth flower. It was.
And, did you see like a TikTok trend or an Instagram trend where you were like, oh, that's where it's stemming from?
I'm too much of an old lady to have TikTok. And actually,
Same.
I wouldn't say that I really noticed it on Instagram, which is where I get most of my tattoo news, I guess you'd say. But it's just weird. It really seems to spread through word of mouth. And it doesn't seem like anyone's really talking about it. They're not saying like, oh, I got Nana's birth flowers today. It just seems like they all kind of, I don't know if it's the idea of collective consciousness.
They're all plugged into the board. Yeah.
But it's like the year everybody got foxes or the year everyone got owls. I say I got a fox that year too, so guilty as charged. But it is really funny. But I think the fun challenge is making everything look a little different. As a custom artist, you don't want people to compare their tattoo. You want it to be identifiable as your work, but you don't want people to be like, I don't know, that larkspur looks awful familiar.
Well, yeah, and you raise a good point because folks are going to be going out with your artwork on their bodies. And so you kind of want to leave your signature style. But at the same time, this is another person's body. So where do you straddle that line between leaving your own personal imprint and making it slightly more generic so that it doesn't become like leaving your personal imprint on someone else's body?
So I would say, as someone that works in a private studio, that actually, I would imagine you probably have the same experience. People are seeking you out because they like your specific style if you're in a private studio. Versus if you're working in maybe more of something like a street shop, they might just be coming in and saying like, hey, I want an ohm symbol. I want to look like an ohm symbol. Let's not get crazy. But I would say that, one of my favorite parts of doing custom tattoos is that it's a collaborative process with the client. A lot of times you're doing a consultation, you're discussing the why they're getting something, where they want it on their body, and that informs a lot of the design decisions. But I would say that more often than not, they're hoping to have something that looks like my work.
Yeah, and Sarah, I think you've said a similar thing in interviews where you're trying to make it a slightly softer process and maybe not as intimidating.
It's an iterative back and forth, and it always starts with that conversation. They'll reach out, they'll say, I want this, and the conversation is then, okay, send me some inspiration photos. If you see something on my page, shoot me that as an example. If you see something on Pinterest, shoot me that as an example. I don't care personally if someone can look at the tattoo and say, hey, Sarah did that. I don't care. The only thing that really matters is that person is getting what they want in the most pure form of what they want. It has nothing to do with me and nothing to do with my art or anything. I just want what they want for their body, and I want to help them achieve that. So just in terms of that, that's the only thing, that's really the only kind of path that I tread with that. Yeah.
And how would each of you kind of describe your signature style or your specialty? So if someone were seeking you out, what are they looking for?
I would say illustrative black work with a pop of color is probably the simplest way to describe.
And define black work.
So for me, it's more. So there's two different kinds of black work. There's black work that's a little more like, I would say, kind of gothy style, heavy blacks. Like I don't want to say like a stamp, but it kind of has that very graphic look to it. I would say that I am lean more towards illustrative black work, which is more fine line. There's a lot of texture. It's pretty detail oriented. I would say that your style is pretty illustrative as well.
Yeah, I think vintage whimsy.
Yeah, definitely.
Like the two words that I would
Definitely,
go with
it takes a lot of nods from like, old engravings, etchings.
Yeah. Anything that's
It's not anything that's really line heavy. And then I would say black work because it is mostly black. I don't really use a lot of soft grays or, I have colors. I can use colors, but I'm really comfortable doing pen and ink art, and I think that reflects a lot in the tattoos I do.
And how has the technique changed? Are we still using the same methods for, kind of the dermal inking as we were, millennia ago? It's just maybe more electrified now? Are there newer techniques that maybe make it less painful? Or
there definitely are. It has evolved massively, substantially.
Yeah, there's so much better technology now. Even the ink is different than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same breath, we still have people using the ancient techniques for the experience and for just the honoring of the process. So we have people using quills to literally, like tap ink into, into people's skin. But I would say probably most tattoo artists are using a wireless, like electric pen, essentially, to do a lot of their work.
Yeah, I mean, the technology is always getting bigger and better. There still is a traditional element of tattooing. I mean, in the sense that so I do a lot of stipple shading.
And again, can you define these techniques so that we better understand it?
I'm kind of trying to break it down. So I would call it like whip shading or liner whips, where I'm using a liner to create sort of like a dotted texture when I shade a lot of times with a lot of the work I do. And it's funny because I would say that the majority of my clients are female. That just happens to be how it's worked out. And a lot of them get pretty dainty, feminine designs, a lot of botanicals, like soft things, baby animals. And that's really a technique, that liner technique, that style of shading came from prison culture because they didn't have access to a traditional shading needle. So it's kind of funny to have this, it's very steeped in tattoo tradition, but I would say it's almost more associated with the feminine side of the art form now.
Yeah, it's interesting to think of, tough guys in prisons getting tattoos to show their manliness and that you don't mess with them, and then the evolution of that. And again, this is nice to trace that evolution into a more feminine style of tattooing.
Yeah, the industry is so much more welcoming to women now than it used to be. I mean, my mentor, when he entered the industry as a brash 18, 19-year-old, he admitted he didn't necessarily believe that women should be tattooing. Obviously, that's different. He's apprenticed to women. He's worked with a lot of women. His mind has definitely changed in 20 years. But, it went from being almost kind of hostile to women to now often women are the breadwinners in their shops, I would say.
And have you both found that? Did you enter into this at a time when you felt like there was hostility or some antagonism toward women? And have you experienced kind of a softening of those attitudes? I mean, you mentioned your mentor, but has there been a more widespread cultural softening?
I definitely would say so. One of my fears, so I did a traditional 2-year apprenticeship it was sort of a hybrid custom / street shop, I would say. And I was the only girl that worked there for quite a while. We eventually got another female artist, and I was the first girl to work at that particular shop. And I was so nervous going into it because doing research online about apprenticeships, you would read these horror stories from women about how, you know, their mentors would use the hazing process as an excuse to assault them, or, you know, try to seek gross favors from them, to put it politely. And just an anger at women being in a very masculine space, especially when tattooing has such a strong tradition of, you know, ex-military, ex-biker culture where there's a lot of hazing. And, you know, the guys were always really, I would actually say, really supportive of me. I think that they were more interested in the kind of art I could produce and my interest in tattooing. And that helped a lot. You know, and I would say that I've seen that overall, just a general softening in the industry in the last 10 years.
Well, that's encouraging. Sarah, have you seen the same?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's, I was lucky enough to kind of, you know, stand on the shoulders of some of the earlier women getting into tattooing.
Absolutely.
And that obviously paved the way for more of us to get into it. There's still some hostility. It's being worked on. I think just humanity as a whole is getting softer and kinder.
I would love to think so. Yeah.
Right now, maybe. But
I hope so. But yeah, it's definitely softened quite a bit. And I would say definitely in the last 5 years, we have seen a substantial shift of far more females in the industry, which is fantastic. Also, like, women are the ones that actually get more tattoos than men by a decent margin. And
wonderful clients.
So true. And a lot of women feel more comfortable getting tattooed by a woman, which is so.
And that's to say, I've had the good fortune of always working with men that have been very respectful of women. You know, they might not be the most touchy-feely politically or socially, but when it comes time to sit down and tattoo a woman, that woman doesn't have any reason to feel like she's in danger, has been my experience. Mm-hmm. And that's really great. I've really had the honor of working with a lot of stand-up guys that are more family-oriented, and they're not objectifying the women in their chair.
Yeah, I mean, that's encouraging, but I almost feel like that's the bare minimum. Like, you're not in danger is like, that's the baseline. And
it sucks. Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely some creeps in the industry, and I'm glad to see that they're getting called out.
Yeah. Well, as in any industry. And so, yeah.
That's true. Yeah, that's very true. It's starting to shift.
Starting to get a paddle in finally.
And so both of you have, I wouldn't necessarily say circuitous paths into tattooing, but you came there by other means. You know, we were talking beforehand, and you started off in journalism and then took a bit of a turn, and then you started off in education, in special education in particular, and then came in. Yeah. Do you feel as though your art is informed by those kind of prior selves or prior professions, so that by not maybe necessarily taking your apprenticeship at 18 or 19 and then coming into a bit later, that somehow changes how you approach the art?
Yeah, I think that for me personally, it's not so much the art that has been informed by it, but how I take people through the process and how I treat my clients. But for me personally, not the art itself, just the experience.
I see.
I would definitely say it's been both for me. I think the art I create now is so different than the art I would have created as an 18-year-old, because I did take the time to kind of stop making art for a little bit during my college career and focus on other things. I felt like when I came back to it, I had so much more drive and passion, and I was willing to put in the work and have the discipline to get better at art, to get to the point where I could tattoo. Even if that journey didn't necessarily start out with me knowing I was going to go into tattooing. I also think it's just kind of handy to be able to interview people. You're not really interrogating people during a consultation, but I am comfortable asking questions, which, I mean, obviously Sarah does an excellent job asking her clients questions. It's not the only way to get comfortable doing that, but it does feel helpful. And I'm really, really interested in the narrative aspects of art. And I think that just is kind of a holdover from, it's just telling stories in a different form.
That's neat. I like that. I love that.
What are some of the strangest requests that you've had for tattoos, or the most intimidating, where you thought, I don't know if I'm going to be able to execute that in the way that you want?
How family friendly is that? Oh gosh, I don't know.
I get pretty tame requests content-wise, I would say. I think the weirdest thing I've ever done was when I was an apprentice, a gentleman came in with a large potato-shaped birthmark on his leg, and he had me tattoo a monocle and a top hat on it.
I believe that is featured on your website among your work.
Oh yeah, I wear that with pride. Maybe I would approach that a little differently now, but I do think that's fun. I had a client once, I guess I will not reveal their identity, that was they wanted a tater tot, and they were so scared to ask for the tater tot. It made it notable. Like, I've done a lot of silly tattoos, but the fear they had in asking for a tater tot was so...
Did they think it was like beneath you, or did they think it was too frivolous?
Were they worried about being judged, perhaps?
I think so. Like, their voice was shaking on the phone when they called the shop. When they came in, like, this person was literally like in tremors, and they're like, I don't want to be disrespectful asking for this tater tot. And I'm like, you've actually made my month. Like, I love tattooing stuff like a tater tot. Like, I think that's so fun. I was delighted. We even added some little crumbs, like it was burnt and stuff.
I love that. That's fantastic.
But yeah, I mean, I don't feel like but I do get challenging requests, and I'll get requests I feel anxious about. But if I truly feel like it's not something that I can rise to the occasion for, like, I would rather refer you to someone I think is going to do a good job. You have to wear that forever. It's not going to benefit either of us if I'm taking on something that's out of my range. Mm-hmm. I would much rather you have a comfortable, happy, positive experience getting tattooed by someone that specializes in what you want.
Yeah, and I think that showcases the dual nature of this, and so both the advantages and the risks, because people are walking around with your art on their bodies, and people say, "Oh, who did that? That's pretty impressive."
Yeah.
But by the same token, if if you exactly that you open yourself up to that reaction.
Yeah. And please, people, look at portfolios.
Yes.
Like, that is the most important thing you could do. Like, it is so, like, I see it less in a private studio because, again, people are seeking you out. They're going out of their way. But I would be so scared working in a street shop that people would just come in and they would get tattooed totally blind, and you'd say, here is my book, please look through my book. And they'd be like, no, I'm sure you're a professional. Like, you don't know, it could be my second day on the job. Like, please look at portfolios.
And Sarah, what about you?
I think the one thing that pops into mind, the project that I ultimately did take on, but it gave me the most pause, was this couple coming in for their anniversary, and what they wanted to do was get a blind tattoo. They wanted to not know what they were getting tattooed on their body until afterward. But it was the spouse that, like, I would work
Selected
with.
it.
They chose the content, and we did the design process, like, with the spouse to go on the other person. And not even seeing it until after it was completely done. What I did do is ultimately, like, I cut out, like, the shape of the tattoo, so at least they could choose where and what size on their body that they wanted. But that
you signed a consent form, right?
Yeah. Hey, here, fill out extra consent forms. But ultimately, it gave me the most pause of any project I've taken on, just because, I mean, they don't know. They do know what they're consenting to, but they also don't know what they're consenting to. You know what I mean? It was, and they both loved their designs, and it worked out just fine. Because the designs had to do with, their life together and their children, and it was lovely. But I think that one gave me the most pause of any project I ever took on, and I didn't say yes right away. I was like, I need to think about this for a little bit.
And so we've been talking about this art form that is almost inextricably linked to the body.
Yeah.
And then we have this exhibition where tattoo art is separated from the body to some extent. You know, I guess, ideal circumstances, you would have live models in there showcasing your work, on different bodies. But here it separates the tattoo art and then puts it on, a variety of objects. I mean, there's are they silicone torsos that you have in particular have worked on?
So my lamps are actually mannequin forms. I sourced and then I added the lights to them and I painted them with acrylic paint pens.
I see.
With the help of Mod Podge, a lot of Mod Podge.
Yeah, because it helps us almost think of this by separating it from the body. Then you begin to appreciate tattooing and the skill that's involved in simply rendering these designs. But that's one of the things that I noticed about some of the works that you've entered into this exhibition is that they are illuminated. So it kind of lights things from the inside out, and so you can see the designs a bit better. Can you talk about why you chose the illumination to begin with, and with some of the designs that you ended up doing?
So I also do art installations, and so I love playing with lighting just in general. It's always fun. Something I really want to highlight about tattooing, something that is really important to me, is I love the way tattoos complement the body form, the way they flow with the lines of muscle, with the curves. And so I wanted to kind of create, sort of half body suits that I felt like just kind of followed those lines of the body. So that was kind of what I went into with it from a design perspective. And I also love Art Nouveau. The Art Nouveau movement is a really huge influence for me. And I love the idea of the fact that so much of that movement was focused on taking everyday objects and beautifying them so that you could have beautiful things just in your space at all times. If it's a cigar box or a cup or the molding on your ceiling, or a round door, which I really wish we had in America. But so I thought it would be kind of fun to kind of make something that's useful. Obviously, I use neon colored lights, but you can have a lamp on your wall and still have it represent tattooing. And I thought that would be kind of a fun way to kind of combine the two.
Yeah, and in addition, and you have already made reference to this, but the fantasy elements start to enter into this, because one of the pieces in this, the title escapes me, but it's like a woman who's bent over backwards and there are kind of mushrooms emerging from her body.
Yeah, wellspring.
Yeah.
And that's I've tattooed that on someone. I think it's on someone's calf now.
Oh, okay.
So that was kind of fun too, is the work I have in this is a mix of work I have tattooed on people and work I haven't tattooed on people. But all of the framed pieces are actual working flash I have from different flash collections I've done.
And define flash.
So for me, flash is the work I draw or draft for tattoos specifically. Like I create it with a tattoo in mind. Now it used to be there were flash sheets in shops. You'd go in and you'd say, I want Tiger number 5 off of row 7.
That's the name for the tattoo menu. Like when you go, and that's the flash sheet.
Tattoo menu.
Okay.
I do like that. That's good. I'm gonna steal that. I'm gonna borrow that. But so traditional flash sheets were multi-use in the sense that like anyone could come in and say, hey, I want Tiger number 5 on flash sheet 7, and they could get that. For me personally, all my flash is single use. So once I tattoo it on a person, I will never tattoo it again. But I also sometimes am able to use my tattoo designs in prints or stickers or mugs or other things, but I will only tattoo it once.
Oh, that's really interesting. So every piece becomes kind of bespoke and unique in that regard.
Yeah, it keeps it fresh and interesting for me, and I hope it helps the client feel like they have something special that's just for them.
Am I right in thinking that you've also done print work, though?
So not in the traditional carving a block and printing on paper, but I do sell prints of my artwork.
I see.
But I work in pen and ink. I draw everything by hand.
Okay. Yeah, because I have a vague recollection of some involvement that you were involved in the ink print rally.
I I've had booths.
I see.
To sell my work, but I haven't actually. Every year I'm like, this will be the year I'm going to work up the courage, but I do not own a Dremel.
And Sara, what about you?
I forgot the question. It's been too long. I'm sorry.
Sorry about that.
No, it's good. It's just I'm normally in bed by now. So.
Oh, well, we were talking about the various objects that are used and the fact that this exhibition, body of work, ends up separating tattoos from the body. And so you had chosen like a cat and then done, and again, I betray my ignorance because I don't know the terminology like flash sheet. I'm walking away with an augmented vocabulary now. But they're almost, I've seen this growing trend towards what I call micro tattoos, where they are just small, isolated, self-contained objects.
Sticker style.
Yeah, sticker style that I've seen people getting. And they almost collect them. And these represent like, charms on a bracelet, different aspects of their...
Just moments in time.
Yeah, and different aspects of their personality. And so I had seen, one of the pieces in this exhibition is a cat that has these micro tattoos on it. And so, again, why did you choose that as your medium for tattoo art?
So all of the pieces that I have in the show are, they're silicone-based. And these silicone-based pieces, whether they're just flat sheets or whether it's like that cat, or I've got like a rat or
There's a leg as well. I think it's
there's
there.
there's an arm, there's like a back. Those are all, they're made from silicone, and what they're generally meant for is for people that are learning to tattoo so that they can practice learning their craft. It's supposed to be like skin. It's really not.
Nothing like it. It's horrible. You would maim someone if you tattooed the way you tattoo those silicone
but
pieces.
The idea is that you're, getting familiar with your machine. You're getting familiar with the process of doing the tattoo. And basically I chose it because I knew that was a thing that I could tattoo. I could literally, like, tattooing, I do it so many hours every week. I am far better at that than drawing, than painting, than anything else. I am better at tattooing, and I know how to do the techniques with my tattoo machine that I couldn't translate to anything else. But also, that's what I wanted to showcase. I wanted to showcase tattoos, and so I thought, sure, let's use silicone. Let's take this approach, because I could tattoo an orange or a pumpkin, and actually it would be significantly easier, but then it would rot. And the terrain show lasts for a month, and so it has obviously the staying power, because it won't go bad, and it doesn't mind standing there for a month, unlike my clients who they just wouldn't go in and stand there in the corner for a month, which is a shame, but
too much social anxiety under the best of circumstances.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, anyway, that was just generally the approach. Silicone exists to as a way to get into tattooing, and so it's a thing that we think of when we think, okay, I want a tattoo, but it can't be on a person.
Yeah, but the appendages I can understand, because, okay, this is some approximation of the human body, which is another thing, I think that a lot of folks would find that I think makes tattoo art unique, and that a lot of artists would find intimidating, is that you're dealing with the contours of the human body, and your medium won't lie flat. But you chose this cat, for example, and again, it just seems so far removed, and I appreciate the way it makes us look at tattooing in a different context. But why that? Just because it was like the most bizarre thing you could think of to tattoo?
There's really no deep meaning. It's a Sphinx cat, and I have a Sphinx cat, so I
did
saw
a
it
guinea
and
pig.
I loved it.
I did a guinea pig, and I think it's just the humor of it. There's a lot of humor in tattoo culture. Tattoo artists, some tattoo artists I know are the funniest people I've ever met, and there's a lot of silliness, especially because traditionally you have your busy season, your slow season, and when you have
when is the busy season and when is the slow season?
Well, this year it's been topsy-turvy. So with the current economic climate, I don't think anyone has a predictable season right now. But generally speaking, tax season, through summer is your busy season. Winter is your slow season with a kick up during Christmas.
Interesting.
And when you're in a shop full of guys ranging in ages from 19 to 50, depending on where you're at. I worked in a shop with a lot of people in their 20s and 30s when I was coming up. There's a lot of silliness that happens during slow season, like marble ramps and custom tech builds and a spear throwing contest, So I think that just this humor kind of permeates the culture in a way that can seem a little strange to people outside of it. And I think that's why a lot of these companies manufacture these kind of silly looking fake skin models for people to tattoo, like cats and guinea pigs and rats. And then some are also tied to our history, like the Cupid doll. Like that's a really, really common traditional tattoo motif. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty cool to be able to tattoo a Cupid doll because you've probably tattooed a Cupid doll at some point in your career. Yeah. On someone, I should say.
Yeah. But you chose certain imagery. I can understand Christina's work seems all of a piece, but you chose to go with more of these kind of micro images. What was the rationale behind that choice? Was it just to showcase the breadth of tattooing?
Yeah, the goal for like that section of the show was to showcase a wide variety of more modern approaches. And so a lot of it was just based on practicality. For instance, the silicone cat has a ton of folds in it. So if I tattoo extremely thin lines on a bunch of tiny folds, the lines will look awful. Mm-hmm. So I used thicker lines for the cat. But really it was like I laid out my material and I was like, okay, I want to show this technique, this technique, this technique, this technique. What would look best on what thing? So a lot of it was just like taking the most practical approach that I could.
Okay. And with this show in general, what are you hoping that the general public takes away? Are you hoping that they start to see tattooing as more of an art form than they might normally do? Or are you hoping to showcase some of these techniques so that people who do appreciate tattooing maybe come away with a deeper appreciation for the techniques that are involved?
If you want to go first.
I think it's really neat to kind of share the history. Like you said, I'm a former teacher, so I like to spread information around. I'm passionate about that. Even my poor clients have to sit there and get a science lesson from me, about, okay, here's the first layer of skin, here's the second layer of skin. So any time I can spread information around, just because I find it interesting, I think other people might too. Not that they necessarily do, but definitely very passionate about just, sharing what I know and sharing the information that I can collect. And maybe if someone looks at tattoos a little bit differently in the future, then that's neat too.
I actually had an experience on the opening night. So, you're trying to circulate and greet people. And I walked up to a person who was admiring Sara's work. And I said, "Oh, hello. How are you enjoying the show so far?" And they very abruptly informed me that they hate tattoos. And that they were just doing, the first Friday circuit. And they were pretty... is the right word emphatic about their dislike of tattoos, and that they feel like it's putting a bumper sticker on a Ferrari kind of mentality. But
I apologize then for using that analogy.
I'm not insulted. I don't care. But, I've heard worse. But it was really funny because this person was so violently opposed to tattooing as an art form, but they had to kind of admit as I was chatting with them that it kind of forced them to look at it in a different context, seeing this work not on a human and just kind of in a gallery space. I do think it kind of made them take it a little bit more seriously. And I don't care if someone takes my work seriously or not at the end of the day. Like I'm here to serve my clients that are looking to be tattooed. And But it is nice to be able to change someone's mind. For me, I think what's kind of fun about the show is I feel like it's a bit of a reverse Uno card. So much of the history of tattooing is borrowing from fine art. Old school tattooers used to rip pictures out of magazines and books and base their flash off of that. And I think it's really fun to kind of return tattooing to a fine art status by having it displayed in a gallery, from whence we came.
Yeah, and allowing that space for originality and people to reflect on the originality that is inherent to tattoo artists.
It's so individual, and that's what's so special about it. I mean, I would say that our work would probably be considered somewhat similar genre-wise, but I think that if you looked at our work side by side, it's so incredibly different because we're incredibly different artists in a good way. And I think that's so special about tattooing. If you look at two American traditional guys, there are probably going to be some differences, even if they're adhering. I'd say American traditional is probably one of the most strict in terms of its visual language. There's rules to American traditional. But even within those rules, you're still going to see a lot of diversity.
Yeah. And I guess it's good of that person who was so adamantly opposed to tattoos that they were even there in the first place.
Absolutely.
And, it's just kind of testament, not just to the power of this exhibition, but the power of art that, it can change minds.
Yeah,
so,
I really appreciate them taking the time to come in off the street and look at our work and spend time. They spent quite a bit of time looking at everything in the gallery. So my hats are off to them that they kind of came in with a preconceived notion, but were willing to challenge that. I don't know if they still... I don't know that they like tattoos any more than they did before, but at least they're thinking about them a little different.
Yeah, and maybe by virtue of it not being on the body, then they can finally, get over that hurdle and then appreciate tattoo art. So, it's the exhibition model is a good one.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. It was really great of Terrain to be willing to host this, and it was awesome of Sarah to come up with this proposal originally, because there really haven't been any shows locally, at least, about tattoos. And I mean, my dad always jokes every time I see him, like, man, I feel like I saw another new tattoo shop. Like, you can't swing a dead cat on a string without hitting a tattoo shop in Coeur d'Alene. And
Poor cat.
Yes. Sorry to all cats. I love cats. I have 3. That said, it is really nice that I do feel like there has been a little bit historically of a us versus them attitude, maybe on both sides of the fence between tattooers and more art gallery artists. I've always done both for basically the entirety of my professional artistic career, and I do feel like it's softened quite a bit on both sides. Tattooers used to I had some tattooers kind of poke a little fun at me for entering art shows when I was an apprentice, and I had some people in galleries kind of give me a little bit of side eye when I would say I was working as a tattoo artist, but I would say that's pretty much negligible now. People are very supportive on both sides.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, and that touches on something that I had mentioned earlier about this mainstreaming of tattooing. And do you feel as though that has almost held back its fine art status? The fact that it has become more and more accepted, the downside or potential downside of that is that it becomes less regarded as an art.
I think more fine artists than ever are looking at tattooing as a possible avenue of being a working artist.
Not a starving artist.
Yeah. Sometimes starving, sometimes not artist. But I do think that tattooing is coming towards a little bit of a crash because it is very saturated right now. I think there's a really big problem in our industry of it's gone from being a very tradition-based industry where it was passed down from mentor to apprentice to shops almost kind of like behaving like puppy mills where they're taking on 2 or 3 apprentices at the time and they're speed running them through like a 3-month apprenticeship or a 4-month apprenticeship, and I think that is very harmful to the industry. There are some people that have taken the self-taught path, and I think if you are really serious and studious about it, there's ways to make that work. But I do think there is something really special about having a mentor. And I think your time as an apprentice is so sacred because that is your time to make mistakes, to experiment. I knew I wanted to do illustrative black work when I started tattooing, but I still had to take the time to practice other styles as an apprentice, to tattoo people for free. So I had the freedom to make mistakes. I mean, obviously you don't want to make a mistake, but you're going to when you're learning any kind of skill. And I think that is such a sacred thing that my mentor was willing to invest the time to have me not bringing in money to the shop so that I could really learn my trade. And it is such a disservice to apprentices to speed run them through that time that is so sacred in their ability to learn this skill. And I really would encourage people interested in learning to tattoo to find a mentor. You know, you don't want someone that's going to mistreat you and make you do borderline slave labor and pick on you and not teach you anything for 5 years. But you do have to take the time to clean the shop and answer the calls and learn the booking system, because that's time you're immersed in your environment and you're picking up so many things that you don't even know exist. Just taking the time and being patient and having a mentor that's willing to invest in you as part of his creative lineage is so important. And I think we're going to have a little bit of a crash, and I think it's going to get better.
That's good. Let us close on that, you know, very realistic but slightly optimistic note. So we've talked about tattooing as an art. We've talked about the history of tattooing. We've talked about this exhibition, and now we move into the lightning round.
Oh boy.
Oh no.
I hope you're prepared for this. Yeah.
I didn't know I had a Sith Lord in here.
So we start off, this is always an either or question. And I'll try to divvy it up so that, you know, one of you doesn't end up going first all the time. But it's a simple either or question. Would you rather spot a unicorn or spot Bigfoot?
That hurts my feelings.
And you have to choose. Unfortunately, we can only give one creature its due. So
I think I'm going to say unicorn just because it would be true magic, but I cannot express enough how much I want to see Bigfoot.
Yeah, and tell folks you did too as well. So.
I live in the Pacific Northwest, so
Yeah.
I'm always looking.
Bigfoot, yeah.
So you'd rather spot a unicorn?
I'd go with Bigfoot.
You're going to go with Bigfoot just for the sake of variety. Yeah. Next question. We move away from the either or. Your favorite ice cream flavor? Actually, Sarah, I'm going to have to, switch the focus to you. You're on the spot now.
Does gelato count?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Pistachio.
Pistachio. Okay.
I would say like some kind of chocolate mudslide.
Okay. You're a chocolate
chocolatey
fan.
as possible.
And does your pistachio have to be green? Is that part of the appeal?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It's got to be green. It's got to be as fake as possible. Yeah, absolutely.
We've actually, this kind of harks back to something that we talked about during our conversation, and that idea of permanency that you carry with you. One aspect of your personality that has been a constant since childhood.
I talk too much.
Did you get in trouble in school for that?
Actually, no. I got the Sunshine Award.
Oh, that's nice.
Third grade.
Okay.
Shout out to Mrs. Nelson.
So in third grade, you got the Sunshine
Sorry,
Award
she's
for
like-
being very, very talkative.
Outgoing, I think was how they politely put it.
I talk too little. It can be difficult to get things out of me.
And that's been the same since childhood.
yeah.
You were pretty
Oh, yeah.
laconic as
Yeah.
a child as well.
Don't look at me. Don't talk to me. I'm just in the corner and I want to observe.
I want everyone to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
All right, Sarah, you're up with the final question. The most bizarre dream that you can remember having. And if you're like, I'm on the spot, I can't really think of anything, I would also take a bizarre real life experience. So if you have a favorite anecdote.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, you shouldn't have chose me first. I talk too little. I can't think that fast. Well, I have no idea. I'm not sure.
I got one locked and loaded.
Yes.
Oh, fantastic!
Okay,
That gives you
goodness.
time to think
Yes,
because
it
you don't
does.
get to wriggle out.
Okay.
So I probably it's because I love movies and my art is really influenced by movies. I watch movies while I draw on my days off. I dream in movies. It's really weird. And one of my favorite movies I dreamed that I wish everyone else could watch with me was about, it starred James Wood playing an Elton John impersonator. Marissa Tomei was his wife, his poor beleaguered wife. He was going to a mob funeral where he was hired to be an Elton John impersonator, and he just fubbed it. They didn't have like Elton John songs. They wanted him to sing like a Dan England song. And it was like a disaster. It's like a road movie. He's like in an RV in the desert. It was like the best 90s movie I've ever seen that doesn't exist.
That is fantastic. I mean, you need to develop a pitch for this.
I had like an ending to it. Like he wins Marissa Tomei back at a karaoke bar. Like I someday I'm gonna write it, but now he's too old.
Yeah, but who needs Netflix when you have dreams like that? And can I ask, like, how long ago was this dream, and is it a recurring dream?
This was a one-time dream. It was a year ago, and I've had a lot of weird movie dreams, but that was my favorite one.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Yeah. That's good. And I love how replete it is with detail. I mean, you've got a whole plot structure.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I could go on for like a good hour explaining this movie to you.
And what's also cool is, dreams follow their own logic. And so you're like, oh yeah, we were in my house, but it wasn't my house, and things like that. And so, yours actually kind of has some degree of coherence. Like it's a road movie that also involves Elton
I wasn't
John.
there. I was
Yeah.
just watching it.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
Okay. The only thing I could come up with is I have recurring dreams about going around to different parts of Spokane. But it's not the Spokane we know, but it's the same Spokane every time. So like certain things are in certain locations, and it's always the same. It is literally, this isn't very interesting. It is to me, but that's it. But it's literally always the same. In my dreams, there's always a page 42 books right where the Apple store is.
That is interesting though. Like most people don't
And
have
there's
that.
there's always specific restaurants and specific locations and specific streets that don't actually exist in actual Spokane, but in my brain,
Dream Spokane.
in Dream Spokane, it is always exactly the same, and I know exactly where to go in Dream Spokane.
I love that.
I love the fact that there is consistency across these different episodes.
Yeah. So what's going on in there? How did that? It's in there. It's firmly in there.
Are you a lifelong Spokanite? Are you a native Spokane? Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So, wow. So lifelong Spokanite also has a dream Spokane that she visits.
Maybe it's an alternate reality.
Friends are the people we met in Dream Spokane along the way. That was terrible. I'm sorry. Please edit that out.
I will keep that in, and I will. I value the mention of Dream Spokane, and the fact that this could.
Yes. Can we make this a thing?
Cool. I just want to thank you so much for coming in today and talking. This is the first opportunity that I've had to discuss tattooing at length. And also talking about this exhibition, and hopefully it will open even more hearts and minds to tattooing.
Shout out to all our wonderful clients out there.
Gosh,
Thanks for keeping us in business and the lights on.
Very, very true. Thank you so much for featuring us as well. It's really been a pleasure.
Yeah, this has been a blast. I was so scared, but you're so wonderful. 10 out of 10 would recommend.